Hi, it's Ray Parker. How you doing?
Great, and yourself there, Ray?
Pretty good.
So it's really a pleasure to connect. And your new documentary, which I want to ask you a lot about, is, of course, excellent. But you and Fran, of course, have this new studio together. But how did you two first meet? Was it through the movie Hired Gun, which you appeared in?
Absolutely. I had a small part in Hired Gun, and we did some promotions and got to talking. And he liked my story. He said, "Boy, I like your history and your story." He said, "That's the film right there." And that's pretty much how I got started about 2 years ago now.
And the name of your company is Power Chord Films. But as somebody who's been very familiar with your work for a long time, there's not a lot of power chords in what you do.
Yeah, no. Well, I wouldn't say that. Actually, the other woman has power chords, and so does Ghostbusters. That's the main thing of those two songs.
My familiarity with you, of course, started with Ghostbusters, but
Yeah.
then years later,
Okay.
I remember seeing a documentary on the film Let's Go to Prison, which showed the musicians in the studio, and you were a big part of that. Has that been a recurring theme of your life, that people didn't realize that you have been working nonstop for basically 45 years?
That's what we're talking about in the film. It's because people don't know that, and it's like educating them or surprising them, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. And did the film entirely come out the way that you'd hoped it to? And the reason I ask this, because a lot of times people are subjects of documentaries and they say, well, they only emphasize this part of my life, but I wish they talked about more of this.
Well, I always wish they talked about more of that, but I left it up to the director and his creative process. Just like when people hire me to produce a record, I don't want anybody getting in my way. So there's a if they made the movie I wanted to make, it'd be 5 hours long. So it can't be there.
Well, what are some of the things that you wish that they did focus on more of, in case people do want to do more homework than just watching the documentary and listening to your music?
Well, there's fun stuff like Marvin Gaye in the studio letting me drive his Cadillac. All kind of stuff like me letting Stevie Wonder drive a car. I mean, just there's a lot of fun stuff that I think the audience would like. None of that's touched on. It's more the career and the other stuff.
And so, as you just hinted at, you were a Detroit guy in the peak of Detroit for the first wave, and you ultimately moved to LA, I would say before Motown got out of there. Who or what was it that inspired you to go out to LA?
Well, first of all, I wanted to go to LA ever since I was 7 years old. But I didn't go before Motown went. I actually came with Holland Dozier Holland. I lived in Lamont Dozier's house when we first came out. And he signed a deal with ABC, and Motown had already come out here. So they already had their new studios up and were working. I don't know if you know, but all the Jackson 5 records were cut out here. They weren't cut in Detroit.
That came up a little bit in the Funk Brothers documentary. But focusing on you here, of course, having songs that are number one besides Ghostbusters on different charts and all that, a lot of people seek out who's going to play on their records and who's going to produce their records based on prior chart success. Have you been turning down more work than we know about? Like, are there a lot of near kind of happenings in your career?
Oh, there's many, many near happening careers. I mean, I was supposed to, the second Prince album I was supposed to produce. And he's a good friend of mine. So he came, Warner Brothers, they had me looking at it. And when he brought the album over to me, it sounded perfect. Now, in hindsight, I was a young kid and I told the truth. In hindsight, I probably just should have said, sure, I'll produce it, make millions of dollars, and don't worry about it. But I just told him the truth. I said, you don't need no producer, no help. I told the company, this record sounds great, And so the record came out and it was a big hit.
And as probably the only person I can think of that would have known Prince, almost worked with him, all the Motown greats and all that, including Marvin Gaye, and spanning all these generations and still having success in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Is there still somebody that you haven't collaborated with that you're hoping to?
Yeah, the person I like to meet is one of my heroes, Paul McCartney. For some reason, I keep missing him. Every time there's a chance to meet him, something happens. Last time the taxi cab in Osaka, Japan, was so much traffic. By the time I got to his dressing room, he had just gone on stage.
Had you ever met any of the Beatles, Paul aside?
Yeah, I recorded with George and Ringo together at the studio.
Wow. Okay. So do you have a number? When I speak to somebody like Steve Lukather, he can immediately say, I've played on this many records. Do you have a number that's fresh in your head? It's fine if you don't.
I really don't, but whatever Steve did, I'm probably in the same ballpark as him.
And speaking of people like Steve, do you hang out with a lot of other musicians and session people, or do you kind of keep your life separate between music and play?
Well, I hang out with the guys you just talked about, Steve Lukather, Jay Graydon, Lee Ritenour, Wawa Watson before he passed, David T. Walker. I mean, those are my buddies, Dean Parks. So we're all the guitar players. We like each other. We're all good friends. David Foster, David Page. You know, it's the same crowd that when I was 18, I came out with. All of us guys that were working back then, we're all still friends and never have left each other, actually.
And do you have a regular jam that you do in LA? I know a lot of guys play, for example, the baked potato.
Yeah. Well, the new place now is the Write-Off Room. And I think they just closed it because he's building a bigger place. But that's been like really, really nice.
So again, going back to something I said, it sounds like you've been working nonstop since the late 60s as a teenager and all that. Was there ever a plan B?
No, there's never a plan B. I encourage students at school and everything to burn plan B. It's like a war here. You got to go forward with no retreating, you know. And so my dad wanted me to go to Ford Motor Company and work as a white-collar worker, and I just wanted to play music. It was always my love. I was a little scared when I was younger about how I'm going to make some money playing music. But you know what? A true musician is only happy if he's playing music. And I could never picture myself in a suit and tie going to work at 8 a.m, you know, taking orders from somebody. It never even rang through my head, even when I was younger. So I just went 150%, let's play music and let's see if we can make it here.
Was there ever aspirations on the entrepreneurial end to say, well, I want my own nightclub?
No, I never wanted a nightclub. I never even wanted a record company. You know, because I'm not the people I see doing record companies, I had some of those opportunities like LaFace and all that. Even with Clive Davis wanted me to have my own label one time. I just don't think I'm that good at talking to a whole bunch of other people about their music and trying to get them to do it. And anytime you become a company or the employer, you know, it's sort of like you're their father. You know, I'm not the father figure type to people my age, you know. So for me, that was never going to work. So I wanted to just focus in on playing the music, writing the songs, and singing it.
And back to you and Fran, of course, the whole world is on hold right now, but is there a next title from Power Chord in the works?
There's not anything from anything in the works right now. I mean, this world has been shut down completely. And it's an interesting time. You know, we can't even get my film out. They moved the regular Ghostbusters film back to 2021. And my record, everything's going to be moved back. And it looks like there's not going to be any concerts this year anyway, so we're not missing that, you know. It is just the whole world is just shut down. So we're all talking about and discussing what's the next move and how do you do it. Like, for instance, if we got the next artist to do, we couldn't film him now. I mean, there's no way to do it with all this, you know, quarantine.
Right. Some artists are kind of thriving by doing live stream kind of concerts. And a lot of artists on your level, I've heard about them doing sessions over the web or rather just sending in their tracks. I know Alice Cooper's done a ton of that. Is that something that you've done in the past few years?
No, I'm not really big on that. I would like to, you know, first of all, my music, I do it in my studio, so I have a lot of fun doing it. But I don't really need the money to have somebody call me and say, you want to play guitar on this song? Then I got to go in all by myself and do all the work. It really kind of kills the fun of me doing it.
So you're one of the guys that just likes to be in the room, not just for the ease of playing, but the camaraderie as well.
Exactly. I like to work, I like to see the artist I'm working with or the producer I'm working with and get something going. I don't want them to send me a track and then I got to take 2 or 3 hours of my day setting it up on my machine. It's not just, by the way, playing. You got to set it up, bring the mix up, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that makes me the engineer, the producer, the everything. And to put the guitar track on, it's just not that interesting.
Right. And another thing that intrigues me about you, and a lot of people like you, is you've made a career out of doing something that a lot of people do for fun or as a release or as a hobby. So when you're not busy with music, what is it that you do and what's keeping you busy right now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I got 4 sons and a wife. That will keep you busy. Okay? Trust me. But you know what? I mean, for me, I'm thinking of music all day, every day. Or I'm playing. I got amps everywhere in the house, guitars, ukuleles. So I'm always noodling and playing. And I just feel like the most blessed guy on the planet to be able to make a living, you know, playing music and doing it what it is I love. I don't think there could be anything any better for me. You know, that's why I said I don't really have a plan B. I can't even have a dream about a plan B.
Well, your friend Prince, who you mentioned before, It was revealed in a piece that Kevin Smith put out that Prince had a recorder going in every room at his house at every moment, in case he thought of a melody or something like that. What is your home recording setup like?
Well, first of all, the way I met Prince is I had the first home studio. I'm sure somebody in the planet had one, but I had one of the early ones in my house. And he was running out of studio time, so he came over to my house to see my studio, right? So that was the first thing we sat and talked about. And then we ended up going back to Minneapolis and putting his first board and tape recorder in his studio, the same as mine. And later, Larry Graham came over to my house, and he bought the same stuff I had. He cut one of $1 million on that equipment, and he thanked me for it, profusely. So all three of us at that time were looking at trying to figure out how to get a studio in the house and how to record. And mine was really, really primitive at the time. If you see the pictures of it, it's like almost a joke. We hung the wires from the ceiling, and me and Reggie Dozier hand wired all of the connections and all that kind of stuff. So people in the industry were hearing about it, like Prince, like Larry Graham, and they were coming over to my house to see the studio.
Wow, I had no idea about any of that. And it sounds like your career is not just success on paper, but it's successful in terms of the relationships that you kept going on for decades and decades.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Then, after my studio at home, I built another studio in North Hollywood called American Studios. That's AMERAYCAN. Everybody cut there. First artist to cut in the studio was Kenny Rogers and Lionel Richie. We did their record. And that goes all the way to all the Macy Gray records, all the Wu-Tang Clan records, all the Cypress Hill records, just Billy Idol, Clint Black. Everybody was recording at American Studios for 20-something years, became really, really popular. Today, I live in Calabasas, and I live in a neighborhood, nice neighborhood, but I had a really big lot. So I built another house next door to my house, and that house is the studio. It's pretty elaborate. You can do this. There's nothing you can't do in here.
And everyone knows Calabasas these days because the Kardashians and all that happened there. When you first moved to Calabasas, was there much going on there?
When I first moved to Calabasas, Kim Kardashian was married to a guy that worked for me. And so she would come over to the house, and very nice person, very nice girl. I think she was 18 or something at the time. And I'll never forget, now, I've seen her years later. We used to have lunch at the Commons and near her store. But I always look at her and think, I would have never thought that she was going to change the entire city I live in and change the entire planet. I didn't know who I was looking at. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're in the company of someone and you have no idea what it is that's getting ready to happen, which I think is pretty exciting.
I can't believe that every name that I've said, you have a firsthand experience with, Ray. So I think that is a sign that anybody who reads or hears this has to see your movie when it comes out. So in closing, Ray, any last words for the kids?
Yeah, for the kids. I love the kids, by the way. And Ghostbusters is my favorite song because it makes all the kids happy and it reaches all the kids, even the new ones, that are, 30, 40 years younger than me. It reaches everybody. And my thing for kids is just live your dream. You only live once. Don't be scared. Don't let people tell you got to get security. You got to do this. There's no security on the planet anyway. As you can see what's happening this year, nothing is secure. So you only live one time. And I think the kids should, if they're fortunate enough to find what it is that they love in the world to do, they should just do that and burn plan B. I don't like plan B, C, or any backup plans. First of all, I don't like the words backup plan. Back, going backwards, and then, fall back. First you're falling, then you're going backwards. It just doesn't make any sense.
Paltrocast.